Welcome, colleagues. Welcome to today's session on turning contracts requirements into a living quality workflow. I'm your host, Dr. David Cheche, and today we are lucky to have Dr. Emmanuel to share with us a lot about how to turn contracts into a living workflow. Dr. Emmanuel is a quality assurance and transformational leader with over 13 years of experience strengthening customer and supplier relationship across different industries. He is currently the president of ASC Group and also a certified internal auditor. Emmanuel has a Sigma Black Belt, and he has a PhD in industrial engineering from North Carolina University. So Emmanuel, we're lucky to have you. I turn it over to you to share with us what you have.
All right, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm honored to offer this presentation to the ASQ Customer Supplier Division members. I understand, we've got several members from across the world, so I'll try to make this relevant to different regions of the world. I have been in quality for over 14 years now. A lot of it within the manufacturing sector, and over the last couple of years in the government services sector. And I've learned a lot about how different the quality control and quality assurance processes are for goods as compared to services. And I want to share those learnings with you today, and also some techniques on how you can all wrangle complex service contracts and get a good best practice process for the quality assurance in a way that is effective to deliver the objectives of your organization, right? I would like to keep this webinar engaging, so I'll be asking questions along the way, and if you can respond in the chat, that's going to be very helpful to me, so I can engage with you. So like I mentioned, quality assurance for services demands a fundamentally different approach than for goods. And I'm sure you will all recognize this. There is stark differences between goods and services, and here I would like to compare and contrast the two. Goods are tangible, you can touch them, feel them, as opposed to services being intangible, right? Because of that, you can check the quality of goods when you receive them, versus for services, the quality must be monitored during the delivery of the service. And defining specifications or expectations for goods is fairly straightforward. Most of the time it's physical. Hey, what are the dimensions, what are the attributes of this widget or these goods, versus when it comes to services, the way expectations or specifications for a service is defined is fundamentally different. And typically achieved, with the standards, with the standards that are well defined in either a statement of work or a performance work statement, or a document that describes the service level expectations for that contract. Defects are visible and countable. You can have an inspection criteria to observe defects in goods, versus for services, detecting defects can become subjective if the standards or the specs are not well defined, right? And because of just the nature of it being process based, time based, and sometimes behavioral. And because of that, there's almost, most of the time you need to develop a customized surveillance plan to evaluate, um, uh, sample and evaluate the service, as opposed to goods and products. There is a lot of standards out there, like the ANSI or ASQ Z1, that is a well established criteria, or a well established standard for sampling goods and products. And finally, for goods, the production and consumption are separate events, compared to services, where you are consuming the service as it's being produced, right? So the question I have for the audience, and you can provide your response in the chat, is what is the in your organization, some of you may be in the commercial sector, some of you may be in the government sector. What is the split, between goods versus services that you are, responsible for managing in your organization? I'm curious to know, you know, what the responsibilities of the audience are. How much of it is, based on this, description here. How much of your responsibilities are related to goods versus services?
You see the chat box at your end, Ivana?
Okay. Yep. I see the chat box. Okay. 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 Yeah, I see the responses coming in. So this is good. It looks like there's a lot of variability in the goods versus services mix. So um, most people that are responding have some degree of services that they are responsible for. And I've been in that boat before, where we had well defined procedures for handling the quality assurance of goods, but not very well defined process for handling the quality assurance of services. So today, I would like to walk you through how you can do that, with some best practices that we've developed in serving the U.S. federal government. Um, Now, the overall process that I I recommend is starting off with understanding the requirements, from the customer, which is usually captured in, a document that could be, the statement of work, or a performance work statement, statement of objectives, or sometimes the customer would just define what reports they want to see to ascertain the quality of service that have been delivered, right? And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with at least one of these, or in some cases, depending on the level of maturity of your organization, may not, have any of these, and maybe I think one audience said, purely transactional, right? So the takeaway here is that requirements or expectations from the customer may live in multiple levels of document hierarchy, and each of those documents matters, and it's the responsibility of the quality assurance team to figure out where these requirements are embedded, and leverage that to make sure um, uh, services are being delivered to the standard and expectations of the customer. Right now, there's a series of steps that are help to identify these requirements. First step is obtaining and structuring the contract. So a contract, and this is an example, from the federal government space. In other industries, it may be different, but the first step is to obtain your contract that defines the expectations of the customer, and identifying all the sections within the contract where you are expected to, that the services expectations are defined, right? And you can do that by organizing each section of your contract into a data model, and I'll show you how to do that in a subsequent slide. Now, it's important to read the contract and identify where all the binding statements are, where your customer can hold you accountable to the service delivery that they are expecting from you, and apply some context to it, right? And in the process of applying context to all the binding statements within the contract, you can parse out these paragraphs from the contract and tag them, by topic, performance areas, responsible party, references, and that helps you to organize the requirements in a way that you can leverage to develop your quality management system, that will drive a living quality workflow for your organization. The third step is extracting performance standards from the paragraphs that you've organized. Now, this is probably, I would say, the most important step, because when performance standards are not, well defined, it becomes very subjective to ascertain the service level to which you are performing. So, in cases where you are not able to identify an objective service delivery standard, you need to work with the customer to refine that, as a necessity for you to operationalize your service delivery, right? And the last step is, not all requirements are equal, There's going to be some requirements that are going to be more critical than others, and it's important you are able to categorize, the service delivery requirements by risk level, so that you can prioritize your service delivery as well as your quality assurance plan, right? This is an example of a U.S. federal contract and how it is structured, with components that enable the service provider to have, you know, high visibility, easily into where the requirements are in, the contract. So there's typically a section that talks about the scope of work, um, and then other sections, complementary sections that may include attachments, evaluation criteria, and an important one is the deliverables, right? And within the scope of work, there's going to be several sections that talk about different aspects of the work, and um, uh, uh, an additional breakdown in the scope of work is a objective definition of what the performance standards are, right? Um, this is an example of how a contract requirements can be extracted and converted into a data model that enables you to build a living quality assurance workflow that you can use to uh, ensure that you are delivering this your services to the expectations of the customer and exceeding their expectations, right? In this example, you can see that each paragraph in the contract is identified, with a line item number, or you can call it a clause number. It's got a title, and the requirements is defined, as well as related information. In some cases, when there is a quantity associated with the service delivery, that is defined. If it's not defined, you should. If it's not defined and it's going to be necessary for you to know to deliver the services, it's good to engage with the customer to define these quantities. And then the very critical piece is, what is the performance standard that you, the service provider, are going to be measured against, to evaluate your level of performance, for the contract. And um, over the life of the contract, these requirements may evolve. So it's a best practice to have traceability and version control of the requirements, and modify them as necessary over the life of the contract. Here is a illustration of how a service contract can be broken down, and organized into a data model and visualized in a way, that you can uh, uh, understand or identify the dependencies between one requirement and the other, because that happens a lot in service, in the service sector. And this tree diagram here, each node is a paragraph level, within the the contract, and you can see how sections of the contract can be broken down into a hierarchical structure where you can identify the parent-child relationships, where there could be a high level requirement with lower level requirements that feed into that high level, where it's a you can leverage this to categorize and organize how your quality assurance management system is designed, right? I'll pause here for any quick questions from the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Imani. A couple of interesting questions coming up in the chat. I see one that says that is service evaluation somehow subjective? So maybe you can, and there's another one from Ray that talks about, it says that the ratio between, service and goods depends on the bid development and the award. Yeah, so he's saying that it depends on the relationship between the two, and he goes on to ask what type of data modeling software did you use for the relationship that you just have displayed.
Okay. Yes, I agree. I haven't seen a a a I haven't seen a lot of contracts where there's some contracts that are exclusively service based, and some that are exclusively goods based, and some that are a hybrid, right? And depending on what the obligations are, you can develop a customized solution to address your organizational needs. Now, is how can you build this model? So let me go to this example here. We use a software called SeeSOR, which stands for See the Statement of Requirements, and it's a tool that leverages AI to read your contract, extract all the paragraphs, and categorize and tag each paragraph by whether that paragraph is a requirement with a performance standard that needs to be met or not, and that's used to build this data model here. And I'll go into an example very soon on so you can appreciate how you could do it yourself, right? I love Peter Drucker's statement: "You can't manage what you don't measure," and I believe that is a common appreciation within the American Society of Quality. We whenever you have a process where you don't have a great measurement system, you also don't have a great management system, right? And what we recommend as a best practice is in goods, because all the attributes can be have physical measurements associated with the attributes that define the specs or the quality of the product. It's easy to measure. However, in services, it's a bit more difficult to do that. And the best practice that we recommend is to adopt this technique here, which is for every requirement, ask yourself, what of these three measures are you evaluating? Are you evaluating for completeness of the service, timeliness of the service, or accuracy of the service? Right. That should be your takeaway from this slide here. And the abbreviation we use is CAT: completeness, accuracy, and timeliness. And it's a best practice also to assign a quantitative score, on a scale. You can decide define that scale yourself. It could be 1 to 5, 1 to 10, 1 to 100, and that allows you to apply you know more quantitative and statistical quality control principles to your service delivery or oversight, right? And so in this example, there's three different requirements, where there's a performance standard defined, and based on these three, you develop a surveillance method and also define how frequently you're going to be evaluating this service item, and what is the risk associated with the service item, so that you can prioritize the level of efforts, and the criticality that you put into your quality management system. Now, this allows you also to adopt the concepts of FMEA and control plan, which are typically more suited towards goods, to be applied towards services as well, right? Let me pause here for questions. I'm sure there's going to be some questions in the chat.
Yes, no question coming up from Sir. You can continue now. Flag you.
Okay. All right. So one additional note here is, when you are reviewing the requirement clauses in your contract, and you bump into any of them where it's subjective and the performance standard is not defined, it's a best practice to develop a performance standard yourself, that you feel is appropriate, or collaborate with your customer to define a performance standard, so that you have less risk of a conflict down the line during the service delivery, on whether you were able to deliver that service to the expectation of the customer or not. Okay, now, when all of this is developed, a static QA plan that you shelf into a drawer does not serve its purpose if you don't convert it into a living quality workflow that is active throughout the life cycle of your contract, right? And the ways to activate a living quality workflow is to ensure that it's continuously updated to reflect the most current expectations of your customer. Make them traceable to the source, right? If there's a revision to the contract, the traceability enables you to update your quality workflow in response to the stated expectations of the customer, and it should be performance driven, so that you can monitor how well you are delivering your performance over the life of the contract. Integrated across teams. So this is also very important. The more complex a contract gets, where it's multi-function, multi-site, multi-year, there's a lot of stakeholders involved, and it's important that these stakeholders are involved in for having visibility into what your quality workflow is, and being informed of the inputs and outputs of your quality management system. You should also make sure that is risk prioritized, because risks also evolve over time. Some items may be a high risk at the beginning of the contract, and if you're able to implement mitigating factors, may become a lower risk. This helps you also to efficiently assign resources to your service delivery, so you're not over allocating resources where you could reallocate those resources to an alternative requirement that is a higher priority, right? And it's best practice to now technology has made it much easier for us to digitize our quality management system. So it's a best practice that your system is digitally enabled, so you can automate various aspects of the QMS functionality. Okay. We are all familiar with the Plan, Do, Check, Act management system, and you should apply that to your QMS implementation for your service contracts, where in the planning phase you identify your requirements, risk levels, and develop inspection checklists that are assigned, and scheduled to your QA team, where as the service is being delivered, at some cadence, you go out there and conduct inspections, make observations, and also solicit feedback from the client. That would feed into your checking phase, where you leverage KPIs and reports to determine whether you need to take some action, of applying corrective actions, preventive actions, which would drive revisions to your QA plan, right? And you can read this column here later, when the slides are shared with you on some of the steps you can take to implement this Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, right? Which drives continuous improvement throughout the life of your contract. Okay. Now, in my experience, different organizations are at different maturity levels. The basic level is implementing this with paper and binders, which I do not recommend. As you become a more mature organization, the best in class system, now, which is I would say is more readily available to us, is to have a smart QMS system that is leveraging AI to enable a living quality management system, where you are able to adapt to risk, do predictive analysis and also auto-generate reports and recommendations on how best to deliver your service to meet the customer expectations, and continuously improve on your service delivery, right? Um, if you want to implement this, yourself, here are the phases. This is a recap of the process that we've walked through, which is take your paperwork that captures all the customer requirements, parse and organize the requirements, and then review those requirements and make sure you can operationalize them, which means, hey, are you able to objectively deliver and assure the customer of your service delivery? um, Digitize and launch your plan, your operationalized plan, and monitor and improve it over the life cycle of the contract. Finally, I'll conclude with some key takeaways, which is I think you all appreciate the fact that we cannot treat quality assurance of services like we treat goods. They are fundamentally different, and it typically requires a tailored approach to developing a robust and effective QA plan. Your paperwork, your requirements paperwork, which could be your performance work statement or statement of work, or some other document, depending on which part of the world you're in, or which industry you operate in. It's best practice to organize that, to understand the relationships between all the requirements, so you do not miss anything, and organize them in a way that you can effectively assign to different stakeholders within your organization to support, right? um, Look out for you know uh, uh, the shalls in your paperwork, your requirements paperwork, that define where the requirements are objectively stated, and transform them into measurable performance standards. um, you know and best practice, apply your plan, do, check, act engine to your QA workflow to drive continuous improvement of your service delivery. And digitize to get you to have an effective and mature quality management system for your organization, right? With that, that comes to the end of my presentation. I would pause here for questions from the audience.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for an engaging presentation. It's a lot of interaction from the audience. Audience, the chat is open. If you have any questions, you can also unmute your mic and ask questions directly if you want to. Okay, yeah, there's one that I think it's the same. What type of software could we use? But I guess you've answered that one. So. Yeah, so it's open for questions, comments, clarifications. Feel free to type in your question or just grab the mic and speak to it. Yes, the presentation will be shared as usual, so look out for that. Yeah, I agree with you, Lynn, that it's an interesting presentation for today. Okay, if there's no question for Emmanuel. Emmanuel, thank you so much for sharing this work with us. A lot of
I have a
insights
question.
to pick up.
I have a
Go ahead.
question for the audience. Yeah, I would like to know from the audience how they are implementing their quality workflows for services today within the organization. How are you doing it?
While we wait for that, there's a question. Somebody wants to confirm the software, Emmanuel. So is that the spelling? If you can type the software or share the link in the chat, that'll be helpful.
It's let me go here to the this is the name.
So that's the SeeSOR. Okay.
And you can find that at our website, ascgroup.com.
Right. Okay. So now we go to your question. Can you repeat the question again, Emmanuel, if you don't mind?
Oh, I'm asking how the audience is implementing their quality assurance workflows for services within the organization.
Okay. So Emmanuel wants to hear from us what our experience with implementing workflows in our organization. Any insight from anybody? Yeah, I think, yeah.
Manually, and I'm guessing manually with Excel or Microsoft Word or SharePoint. What's the tool, or is
There's
it
one
paper?
that Julie is saying that we require our services to be provided to provide an ITP or a quality plan for the project that addresses the specifications.
Okay, we use software in an EQS module for supplier quality. Okay, mostly through the engineering group through.
Yeah. And then Ray says they have a QA process.
I see.
Yeah, it's a lot of insights.
Okay, hey, so the if you don't have a digital system yet, I can give a free suggestion is just take what you have and the model that I presented and ask Claude to develop a system for you, and you would be you should be able to get a minimum viable product that works for you. If you don't have a quality management system yet and you want to implement this on a budget, you can challenge Claude to build something for you, even if it's implemented in Excel, because that's a step level better than a paper based process. Yeah.
So somebody's asking whether Gemini it's going to work. I think it's mainly an AI platform, right?
Yes, but Claude has a superior capability to develop, rich Excel, based tools with functions in it, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But I
Good.
haven't tried, Gemini. You can try Gemini as well.
Yeah, I think the response right. Somebody also says the old school approach is good. So yeah, that's yeah. I think it depends on everybody's. It's fine, interesting.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
All right. Thanks so much for this. Has really been an engaging presentation. I really enjoyed it, the chat, the contribution, and also the time that you took, Emmanuel, to pace yourself in your presentation for us to be able to take away the most important points. Thank you so much for the presentation today, and thanks you all for attending. The presentation will be shared as usual, so you're free to go through it again and share the link with your network. So all the best, and Enjoy the rest of your evening, day, or afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you, Emmanuel.
All right. Thank you, everybody.